to Practical Talk Time. I'm your host, Usha Kumar. Today, I'm going to deal with a topic that we've dealt with before in the last 4 years, and still society doesn't seem to have taken notice or learned much from it. And here we are presenting it again. And to help me with that, I have a wonderful guest, new one, Rodwell Lawton. She comes from the Women's Center of Greater Danbury, and she's here to talk about domestic violence and sexual assault. I believe in the first segment today we'll only have time for domestic violence, and if you come back again next week we can give you the sexual assault discussion. Anne has a master's degree in social work, and she also is certified in domestic violence and sexual assault counseling. And she brings a lot of experience with her, having helped children, families, and all the adults in all of these social problems. So please join me in welcoming Anne. Anne, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
It's so nice. You are new to with the Women's Center, are you?
Yes, I've been there for a few months now.
I've had guests from your organization over the years, over the last 4 years, and we've discussed topics such as domestic violence, sexting, bullying, and cyberbullying, and such wonderful topics that mainstream media is just picking it up now on sexting, and we did a show on it 4 years ago, even before it was that well known or prevalent. And I have to really appreciate that organization. So I would like you to first tell me a little bit about yourself, more than what I introduced you with, and also tell us something about the Women's Center of Greater Danbury and all the good work that it does.
Wonderful. So again, my name is Rodwell Lawton. I do have a master's in social work, but I like to focus on working in the community to create greater change, working at a macro level to change culture and society in general. Now, the Women's Center is located in Danbury, but we serve Upper Fairfield and Lower Litchfield County areas, and we provide services to survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. I am the program manager of education and outreach, so I supervise our community educators, and we are out in the community talking about these issues, doing prevention work, and making sure the community is aware of what's happening.
Tell us a little bit about the Women's Center itself. It's been there around a long time. It used to be called just the Women's Center, and then it became the Women's Center of Greater Danbury, and now from what you're telling me is more than just the Greater Danbury area. So your help is reaching a lot more people in the Fairfield County and Litchfield County.
Yes, we serve over 26,000 individuals yearly.
Oh, really?
Yes, we touch a wide range of people. We do this through our individual counseling, through our educational programs. We have court advocates that help survivors through the court system. We have a shelter. So we really touch a lot of people's lives in different ways. We were founded in 1975. The Women's Center, we get that name because we were founded during the women's movement. However, we do offer services for men and youth.
So this is for a whole family, anyone. You don't have to be a woman to seek help at this place.
Absolutely.
And that is wonderful because society has changed so much, and we are all being more aware of violence that can come from anyone, be it a man or woman or even a child, as we have known recently.
So men do experience sexual assault and domestic violence. They have lower rates of experiencing this, but they're still survivors and they still need help. And there's a lot of stigma that males experience. So
it's underreported too.
It's definitely underreported, and we need to be talking about this so people can come forward and seek the help that they need.
So kudos to the Women's Center of Danbury for doing such yeoman work in this area of social help that people can get. How do people get referred to your place? Do they just know instinctively whom to call, or how do they know to call you?
Well, there are many different ways. They could be referred by another counselor in the area. It's important if someone is a survivor of sexual assault and domestic violence that they receive counseling from the center, because we understand trauma, the trauma that comes from these crimes, and can work with the victim in a trauma-sensitive way. So we get a lot of referrals because of that, because we are the experts in working with survivors. And also through our hotlines that we have, we get survivors that way. Also, we can get referrals from the police if the police are working with survivors. So there are many different ways that people come in contact with the organization.
I know that the Women's Center has been helping people locally, but then sometimes when somebody comes seeking help with domestic violence or assault, what happens is the Women's Center immediately reports it to their police, and some families really don't want that. So what do you have to say about that, from your own experience or from your rules per your Women's Center?
So all of our services are free and confidential. So if you come to us, we do not have to report to the police. We will do whatever is in your best interest as a survivor in what you want to do. Reporting to the police isn't always the best option. So we really honor the survivor and what they want, what they think is the best choice for themselves, and we'll work through those different options.
The Women's Center itself, is that a government agency or something set up by a government agency, or is it just a private charitable organization? What kind of an organization is it?
So we are a nonprofit organization. So we do receive some funds from the government for certain things, but we are a nonprofit. So we do a lot of fundraising so that we can continue doing the great work that we do in the community.
I love it. Do you know about the size of your organization? Has it grown a lot of late?
Yes, actually, the organization is growing very fast. We have the largest community education department that we've ever had, and we have, I think, over 30 employees, and that's very big for a women's center.
Oh, I see. Please tell us a little bit about domestic violence, because that's what we want to discuss for the first segment.
Yes.
We've had shows before in the last 4 years with other members of Women's Center talking about domestic violence, and also the men's initiative, you know, One Man Up. And such initiatives. Also, we talked about bullying that also causes the kind of abuse that happens in a domestic situation. So we've handled it, but still I think in light of all the news that we hear that make the headlines among celebrity and among famous people, and even the not so famous people, this seems to be there, and the men don't seem to know how to handle it, and the women also don't know how to handle situations that can get really explosive. So can you please touch upon the main reason for it? Where do you find most of this happening? What kind of demographic, age group, and what kind of, see, it seems to go from, you know, doesn't seem to be restricted to a certain economic group.
Absolutely.
It can happen in the richest household as in the poorest household. So can you please tell us something of that?
Absolutely. So domestic violence is a national epidemic, and it is found in every community regardless of age, race, culture, socioeconomic status. So it's great that we're talking about this, that we're now talking about this because of celebrities, Ray Rice, the NFL, but this is happening in our own communities every day. And it shouldn't take a video or something that's happening with a celebrity for us to have these conversations, because we know it's affecting people. So 1 in 4 women will experience domestic violence in her lifetime, and 3 women are murdered each day in the U.S. by an intimate partner.
I see.
Yes, so these are staggering
3 women
statistics.
in the nation or in our area?
In the nation.
In the nation, okay.
But still, that's very high, yes.
it's just that it's hard for me to put a handle on this because every decade we pride ourselves in improving education and having a more educated citizenry. And then now we wonder, with all the education, with all the modern facilities, people have an easier life today than before in certain ways. Imagine housework used to be such a drudgery before we had all these machines, and we all have fewer children today than before. So if you look at the real stressors in life, we have reduced a lot of the stressors already in life, and we are more educated. So why is this domestic violence increasing so much?
Yeah. So domestic violence is still around for many different reasons. Obviously, if we knew the direct reason, we'd be able to fix this and stop this from happening. But we do know a little bit about why this happens. So domestic violence is a pattern of abusive or coercive behaviors from one partner to another partner in an intimate relationship. Now, often power and control is part of this. So anger and anger management isn't in domestic violence. We often think, abusers are angry and that's what makes them lash out. It's not about that. It's about having power and control over another human being. And often it's males who are perpetrators. We know that, again, there are males who are victims and female perpetrators. But in general, it's males, and it has to do with the socialization of males, how males are taught to be strong and powerful and dominant, and that translates over into relationships.
As I mentioned before, how is the difference among the different economic groups? What do you find?
We actually find similar rates across all economic groups. How these groups respond to domestic violence can be very different. So obviously, if a survivor is from an upper middle class household and they have their own bank account and finances to leave their perpetrator, that makes things a little bit easier. It's harder to leave when you don't have your own finances, you can't support yourself, and you're going to have to go live in a shelter. That's a very big decision and a hard decision to make.
So economic hardship or economic independence is needed, but then very often, even in a person from a higher, upper middle class family, if their finances are all very much tied in or tied up, they don't really have the ability to move out, right?
Exactly.
And we also have to talk about women that stay in abusive relationships. As Meredith Vieira came out and said that, and you would think that she's a journalist and she's a very outspoken person, and she herself was in a situation where she stayed in a relationship that was abusive, and then something drastic had to happen before she left that, right? Yeah. But then she had to find a job, remember, in another state before she could leave that relationship.
Right, because you have to plan for your safety and plan leaving an abusive partner. It's not an easy task. In fact, a woman, on average, takes 7 attempts before they leave their perpetrator completely. So we know that it's hard for women to leave abusive relationships.
And how about men, if they are in an abusive relationship and they want to leave?
I don't know the statistics on average how many attempts it takes them to leave completely. I'm sure it takes multiple attempts because we have to remember that we love these people. Typically, the relationship doesn't always start abusive, and so it isn't as easy as just leaving this person and forgetting about them. You have a relationship with that person and love or like them.
Yeah. So, another question I have is regarding families where they do have all of this domestic violence happening because of situations where they feel so frustrated, and one is frustrating the other, or they're all frustrating each other in a family. It's not just adult spouses. I'm talking about children, parents, the whole gamut. But in such cases, shouldn't there be some way that they all can be made to understand the dynamics of a family? And instead of just telling them, oh yeah, you have to leave the abuser, is there any way to get them to understand and then coexist peacefully?
Well, we always suggest abusers going into batterers counseling and getting that done first and foremost before couples counseling can be done, because if the abuser hasn't addressed their own power and control dynamics, those dynamics will play through in couples counseling or family counseling. So it's important that an abuser gets their own counseling for their abuse before any family dynamics or family counseling gets addressed.
What if they refuse to go for that?
Well, yeah, you can't make someone
great counselors that can somehow persuade families to do that.
Well, the
family members to do that.
Yeah, the Women's Center does not work with perpetrators. However, there are organizations in the area that do, so we can make those referrals. But unfortunately, you can only persuade someone so much. And if your abuser will not go into counseling, then there are other options, and you have to kind of plan in different ways.
And what you said before is really interesting, because they are a family and they are spouses just because there was love there before, right? So very often it turns, and no one is perfectly good or perfectly or totally bad. And so they have all these gray areas of their emotions and personalities, and it becomes a love-hate relationship sometimes. So sometimes I feel that they should be given some kind of help in terms of understanding, especially the perpetrators.
Yeah, absolutely. Help is needed on both ends, for the perpetrator and for the victim. I also want to go back to something you said about conflict in the family. You know, conflict is normal in relationships. So we need to kind of figure out when that conflict turns from something that's a normal fight into abuse. And that's a hard line to figure out, but not every relationship is perfect, not every person is perfect, but we have to have good conflict resolution skills, listen to each other, and understand how to resolve conflict in a healthy way.
Does the Women's Center give any help in that regard, or again they'll have to go to another agency or somebody else who would train them on that?
Well, we can work with survivors on conflict resolution and conflict management, that they can then implement those strategies with their intimate partner or with their children. We also have educational programs where we talk to children in the schools about conflict resolution and starting those techniques and strategies early on.
Your organization goes into schools to teach children, right? What do you talk to children about violence?
Well, we talk about a wide variety of issues depending on the audience. So we work with preschool, pre-K, kindergarten students talking about safe and unsafe touches to their bodies. We talk about acting with respect and care and kindness, so anti-bullying programs. And then in middle school and high school, we talk about dating violence, sexual assault, cyber safety. You mentioned sexting, which is a really big thing right now. We talk about bystander intervention. Basically, we cover any topic that relates to sexual assault and domestic violence and talk with kids about these issues.
On this show, we also had a show that discussed teen dating violence. So I think the viewers, if they want to see any of those shows, they should go to our website, practicaltalktime.weebly.com, and go into the archive section and really go and watch those shows, because we do mention a lot of things about how to take care of these problems, how to recognize the symptoms and how to deal with those. But then I would like to know, in terms of the prevalence of domestic violence, is it getting more violent today than before? And in what way is it different now?
Well, domestic violence is played out differently today because of the technology that we have. So perpetrators are very smart and can use tracking technology with cell phones and computers, and having that possessiveness and always knowing what's going on and tracking their victim's moves. So that makes it very hard for a victim to plan for their safety or to plan leaving, because often when they use a computer, anything they do is going to be tracked and the perpetrator is going to know. So that's how domestic violence is playing out a little bit differently nowadays. But
so how many people, I don't think the average citizen would know that just following the activities of the spouse or lover or whoever, boyfriend or girlfriend, they don't even think that that is wrong, that that is a form of abuse. So what do you tell those people?
So being possessive isn't necessarily a form of abuse, but it's a warning sign that it could go there. So even if you're in an intimate relationship with someone, you still deserve privacy, you still deserve your own time, you are not owned by any other person, you are your own human being, and you need to recognize that if someone's very controlling of your time, wants to know where you're going, calling or texting you constantly, that's a warning sign that they don't trust you and are trying to have control over you, and that could turn abusive later down the line.
What about the attention seekers? Because sometimes I find that people get very angry and abusive when they think they're not getting the attention from the other person, they're not getting the time of day from that other person is just doing what they please and they're not showing the needful attention.
So we do see that with abusers, that they act very jealous and possessive of the person because they want that own attention for themselves. Sometimes that does play out that way.
So when is it a healthy thing for people in a family to show attention to each other? And then when does it become like too selfish kind of personality that then you do kind of ask for the other person, to get mad about not getting the attention? So where is the line?
Yeah, well, it's a fine line. It's kind of a gray area, but I would say to trust your instincts and trust your gut. If it's making you feel bad about yourself and it seems possessive, it probably is. And healthy relationships are based on communication, understanding each other's boundaries, having empathy for one another. So, and equality also. We have to have equality in our relationships. Each other's values, beliefs, and times should be equal. So if those aspects are missing, then we know something is wrong.
Yeah, I do believe that in a family, you all have to understand one another and give space for each person and not try to control every action of the other person. That is really true. So why do you think women stay in abusive relationships? So, and thereby leading to more of the domestic violence.
Yeah, so that is the question everyone is talking about right now. And there isn't one answer to that, and it's very complex. But there are some trends that we see why women stay. So first, again, we talked about love in a relationship. Victims want the abuse to end, but not the relationship to end. So they stay because they have hope that things will get better. He says that he will change. And so they're staying out of hope and love for that person, which is understandable if we've married that person, had kids with them. You can't just break ties easily.
So you are saying that there are warning signs right in the beginning, the possessiveness, the need to control. So at that stage, if we can help these people, and if people can recognize these symptoms and get help right at that stage, is there a possibility we can reduce domestic violence?
Absolutely. It's much easier to fix the problem when you recognize it early on and seek help. So that's why our education work is really important, because we talk to youth and to the adult communities about these warning signs and being able to see when this is happening, recognize it, and seek help.
When you go to schools and colleges, do you have like a mixed group of staff, men and women, who are part of your staff that go and talk to them?
Yes, so we actually have males and females on our community education team that go into the schools and the community and talk, and that's great that we can have both perspectives.
We just have 3 minutes left. I do want to ask you about the current social media that is now opening up discussions from among the whole nation or even around the world. So in terms of your topic, domestic violence, can you give us some pointers on what is being discussed today?
Yeah. So when the Ray Rice video first came out, a lot of media outlets were posing the question, why is she staying with him? She needs to get out. This is crazy. And women took to Twitter and made the hashtag #WhyIStayed and started this conversation about why women stay in abusive relationships, how we have to end victim blaming, and we need to not blame the women for staying, but ask why is the abuser being abusive and change that conversation. But it let us know that there are complex issues at hand, that leaving isn't easy. In fact, a woman is at a higher risk of violence and homicide once she decides to leave. So leaving is dangerous, and we have to recognize that there's that they love this person, that they might be humiliated over what's happened to them and ashamed, and that there is no way out for them, or it might seem that way, or they don't have the self-esteem or the guidance or support to get out.
What are the stressors, according to what you are finding in your work, for the guys who are, or the girls that are being the perpetrators in an abusive relationship? What is the key, and you want them to know that and understand and change?
Yeah, so I want to make sure that we know that hard financial times and other stressors aren't the cause of domestic violence. It's this power and control behavior that someone exhibits from the way we socialize people in our society, and we normalize this power and control that males usually exhibit.
So if they try not to be wanting the control, they'll be okay.
Yeah.
With more of an equal relationship.
Exactly. About equality in a relationship, having each person's thoughts and values be equal, and being empathetic, and communication.
Thank you very much, Anne.
Yes, thank you.
That was Anne Rodwell Lawton. So that was a wonderful discussion. And those of you, if you have any questions or if you need help, you can always go to their website, to the Women's Center of Danbury. You can look it up online. Watch the show again next week, because we are going to continue with a discussion on sexual assault. So thank you all for watching, and until next time, goodbye.